Hey TCFAM, we are so excited to have our first YouTube video that we're sharing with you all today. And today we discuss wanting to talk about the importance of just like caring for each other when things get really, really hard. And we have had a really tough start to 2023. I know that you all see us and we're smiling and happy, and that is who we are. But it's not been without a lot of challenges this year. And so we're going to talk about some of those challenges and really how we've come through for each other as a couple.
We were super excited because there were so many things that were firsts for us last year. Our first Valentine's, our first birthdays together, our first, no, that's not true.
As a married couple.
As a married couple, true. Our first Thanksgiving, our first Christmas together. And, we thought when people said the hardest year is the first year, that it was just going to be about adjusting the temperature and things that we've talked about and kind of made light of. But who could have known that real tragedy was just around the corner? And it was a hard first year.
And Christmas was amazing. We had a wonderful Christmas party at our home with lots of our friends and family here. So it was great. And so the next day was a regular day after Christmas, shopping, trying to find deals, all that good stuff. And we went to bed like normal. It was a beautiful, beautiful night, a beautiful holiday season. And then I woke up about maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, and I noticed I had tons of text messages from my family. My sister had called, my brother had called, my other brother had called. Like, people were frantically trying to get a hold of me. Then Cheryl looked at her phone and she was like, your family's calling you. And so I immediately knew something was wrong. And I knew it had to be Jeff because everyone else had been texting me and calling me. So I knew something was wrong with Jeff. So I had to find out what it was. So I picked up the phone and called my sister first, and I said, what's wrong with Jeff? Because I knew it was Jeff. And she said, he's gone. And like in my mind, I couldn't compute that Jeff was gone. Like, I had just talked to him the day before. We had just spoke on Christmas. How is he gone? And then she went on to tell me that he died at work. And so it was an out-of-body experience. I remember getting out of bed and just like falling to the floor in disbelief and in grief. And I don't even remember what I said to you, if I even told you at that moment what happened.
I was just overhearing the conversation with you and your sister.
So my brother Jeff worked in a factory, a food factory. He loved working in plants, and he was at this job where he was working with beans. He was helping can beans, and his 5th day on the job or 6th day, I don't remember which day it was, but it was fresh, a new job he was so excited about. And he fell into the bean hopper, some kind of way. He fell into the machine that was canning the beans, and he suffocated and he died. And I can't even like describe the trauma that we felt, just not only losing him, but just the manner in which he died. I had experienced loss before. My parents were deceased. I lost another brother, but this one, the tragedy in this one was unlike anything I'd ever experienced.
In a time like that, that intense grief and shock, we just sat there, both of us stunned. And I don't know that I've ever felt so helpless in my life. I wanted to say the right thing. I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to change it. I wanted to comfort her. And the only thing I could do was just put my arms around her.
That's what I needed at that time. And she was there. And again, like not knowing how to manage the grief or to interact with me. There were days when I couldn't get out of bed. There were days when we were playing cards or doing something really light and fun, and I became super emotional because the thought of my brother not being able to play the game that I was playing, or not being able to watch the Cowboys lose, even though he would always say they were going to win. It was just something I'd never, the grief was just so different this time. And I think the other part which made it so hard is because my brother Jeff had a pretty rough life. He had spent a lot of time in a drug addiction. He was in and out of jail. And the last 8 years of his life, he just completely rehabilitated himself. He was working, he had his own place, he had 2 cars. He was the happiest he had ever been in his entire life that I've ever known. And he was always just talking about the power of positivity and manifesting goodness for your life and for others around you. Just such a good person. And for his life to be snuffed out like that was the hardest part for me to be able to deal with. And I don't know what it was like to be around me when the first, month or two, even now, I have moments, I'm getting emotional now, but Cheryl stepping up and just being there with me, flying to Pennsylvania, being there with my family, holding me when I just couldn't stop crying for she didn't know what was going on, but she assumed. I couldn't have made it without her love. And that was a test in our marriage. Like, I was struggling and she was there every single step of the way. And I could not have gotten it to this far 6 months out without her constant love and support and checking in on me. Are you okay? Are you feeling okay? Like, she would just do like a temperature check. If she sensed anything, with me, if I was deep in thought, she would probe, like, what's going on, or how are you feeling? Do you want to talk about Jeff? And just having that space to be able to do that and be vulnerable really has made such a difference in how I've been able to heal and be there for other members of my family, and then even just honor the memory of my brother Jeff, who would have made such a difference if he had had more life left. So that was 6 months ago that Jeff passed away, and about a month after he passed away, I transitioned and started a brand new job. I'd been, in the public ed space for over 25 years, and I had this huge transition that I was about to experience, which was also a really, really hard time. Then I was about to turn 50. So like all these things were happening in the first 3 months of the year that really just made me take a step back and just, evaluate my personal space and what I want from life and what I want from my marriage and what I want for myself in the second half of my life, turning 50. It's been just a huge emotional time. And it's not something that I would have ever reached out and asked someone to support me or be there for me. And until I got married, it was like, when you're married, you don't have to ask for that. That person should know, and that person should be there, and that person should be patient with you when you're experiencing all the highs and lows of grief and transition and a milestone birthday and just so much in that first 3 months. And I know that I could not have made it through like I did without, your love and support and your patience, because her patience is what I needed the most. And it's not over. She's still in that space. I still have my moments. And she's been there 1,000%.
I mentioned earlier that we want to support and we want to help and we want to be there. And we often, most times, don't know how to do that. But the thing you also have to think about and realize when you find yourself in this type of situation is the person who's struggling and suffering and going through it, they also don't know how to tell you what they need. And, every day it was a different emotional experience that we went through. And Some days you felt like, is this going to end? Because you're just in so much pain. And it's kind of scary because it kind of takes over you.
It does. So then, you guys, we were gearing up for my 50th birthday. My 50th birthday, I turned 50 March 23rd, and I've been looking forward to this birthday, like with excitement, but also like, oh my God, am I 50? Is that really true? And my wife had so much planned for me during my whole birthday month and to celebrate me. And so I'd like for her to talk about my birthday and another critical moment in our relationship and in our life as people and as a couple.
It was Tracy's 50th birthday. I wanted it to be special, but she'd been through so much, and I was determined that she would be celebrated and find some kind of joy in each day leading up to her birthday. So the entire month, she was celebrated every day with a card, with a cake, with a gift, just little surprise outings, every single day until her birthday. And we planned a trip to go to Mexico, her favorite place, and we found a new resort that neither of us had been to, and that was going to be the icing on the cake for Tracy's 50th.
Yes.
She decided she didn't want to have a big party. She just wanted to go away. And I think that was kind of a direct response to losing her brother and just being in such an emotional place. So we just planned a trip for two.
So we got to this beautiful resort in Cabo that we went to, and I could tell leading up, maybe a few days or a week or so leading up to our trip, that Cheryl wasn't her normal self, that she was just really tired. Her face was red, she looked hot, she was kind of hot all the time, and I could tell something was not quite right, or that she didn't feel great before we went on our trip. But like Cheryl, she was like, oh, I'm fine, I want to make this a special birthday for you, and she didn't complain. When we got to Mexico, the night of my birthday, we had dinner, and she just was off. She was off, and I couldn't put my finger on what was going on, but she was off. And she's like, I don't feel well. Like, I just don't feel well. So we thought, we've been traveling, we're in Mexico, it could have been anything that may have, made her not feel well. Did she eat something bad? Was it just traveling anxiety? We really didn't know. And the next morning, she's like, I'm really sick. Keep going. Okay. So we tried to go throughout the day, try to get to the pool, to the beach. We really weren't able to do that because she was not doing well. Her breathing was labored. Her heart was beating really fast. And so we knew something was going on. So Cheryl's like, I need to see the nurse or someone at the resort, the paramedic, someone here, because I'm sick.
It was a feeling I'd never experienced. My heartbeat was over 140 beats per minute. My blood pressure was through the roof, and I was very weak. When I walked down the hall to the nurse's office, the concierge, that's where they met me, I could barely walk down the hall. And during that trip, they came to help twice, and I barely remember the trip. So that was really scary. I wasn't myself at all, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and they didn't know either. Tracy kept saying, let's just go home. And I said, no, we're not going home. This is your birthday. I'm gonna be fine. Maybe I'm just nervous about something, or you kind of start making all these assumptions, or you're trying to find a logical explanation, for what's going on, but nothing made any sense.
So the night before we left, I could tell she was not well. She wasn't sleeping well. She was restless. Her heart was beating. She had no appetite. So when we got home, it was like, let's go to the doctor immediately. And we went to the doctor, and I want you to stop me if there's anything that you'd rather I don't say. Okay? We went to the doctor, and Cheryl was struggling. She was struggling to walk into the doctor's office. She was struggling to communicate, to find words, she could not communicate her thoughts. And again, her heart was beating fast. She could barely walk. She couldn't really eat much. She wasn't hungry. And we knew something was terribly wrong. Again, we still didn't know what was wrong.
And I was trembling. My hands were shaking. Like Tracy said, I couldn't find my words. And I was and this is very unlike me, I was very, very agitated. I was almost on the verge of being, angry, very snappy, very, what was the word, baby? Suspicious. Like I was just looking at people like, why are they doing that? It was like everyone all of a sudden was, what's the word? It's not suspicious.
Paranoid.
Paranoid. Mm-hmm. I was paranoid. And they, just to tell you to what level, the nurse came in to do an EKG, and thank you. When she left, I said something really horrible, like very aggressive. Like, I'm not kidding you, aggressive. And she didn't do anything but take my test. And they wanted me to get a urine sample, and I couldn't make that happen. Not my brain, not my body, nothing. I couldn't make it happen, and I would not allow anyone to help me. Not my mother, not Tracy, no one.
So at that point, the doctor was like, I need to get her labs, get these tests. I want to do an MRI of her brain the next day immediately, because he thought maybe something was wrong with her brain because she was just struggling to communicate and all the things I mentioned. The next day, we didn't even get to the blood work, getting the blood work, because immediately Cheryl knew, like, she needs to go to the hospital. So I called her mom, Mimi. You all know Mimi, and I said, Mimi, Cheryl needs you, and I think she needs her mom. So Mimi came over, spent time with Cheryl, just kind of, just caressed her, waiting for the doctor to give us our results. And then, do you want to tell them what happened?
Mm-hmm. So Mom was lying in the bed with me, and she was just rubbing my back and asking me how I was feeling. So I was trying to tell her, and mind you, I don't get sick. I mean, I'm just rarely ever sick. So this was very odd. And then all of a sudden, and I mean all of a sudden, I wasn't feeling well, but then all of a sudden it was panic, not feeling well. I said, I have to go now, like now. And I had on my nightshirt, and she said, okay. And so she got up and she ran to get Tracy. And I was struggling to put my clothes on. Like, I couldn't get my feet in my pants, and I couldn't get them pulled up. And so somebody said, I don't know if it was Mimi or Tracy, but said, I'm gonna go get the car. Just give me a minute. I said, no, I don't have a minute. Like, no. And I took my mom by the arm, and I said, come on, we're going. And we got in the car, and Mom took me to an emergency care around the corner. And we waited. I guess then you talked to the doctor.
Yes, and the doctor called me and said, Tracy, get her to the hospital now. She's experiencing a thyroid storm. And I was like, well, she's already at the hospital. She's in the ER. What is a thyroid storm? I had no idea. I'd never heard of that. So when I talked to the doctor, I said, the doctor, here are her lab results. She's having a thyroid storm. So they immediately started to treat her, but they knew that it was critical, that she needed to be in an ICU, and they did not have a bed at that particular facility. And so they tried to give her medicine right then to try to stabilize her a little bit. Because remember, her heart was beating 140 beats per minute. Her blood pressure was elevated. She was agitated. She was starting to get confused and a little disoriented. Then an ambulance came and transported her to another hospital. Now, meanwhile, we're thinking like, okay, but what's, the thyroid, okay, we'll give her medicine and she'll be fine. It'll be fine. Again, this was right after the trip for my birthday. And then in the ambulance, you want to talk about the ambulance ride? I think that, this is when we knew the severity of what was going on.
The medic that was working in the ambulance was asking me very, very basic questions. Of course, I knew my name, but I didn't know my birth date. I didn't know any of the other questions he asked me that were personal questions that any person would know. And so my sweet mom was just kind of filling in the blanks for me. And I said, Mom, please don't do that, because if you answer for me, then they're not gonna be able to figure out what's wrong with me. Like, I should know these things. And that's the last thing I remember for days. And I didn't black out. I didn't pass out. I was still functioning on some level, but that part of my life I don't remember at all. For days after I got home from the hospital, and Tracy's going to talk about the hospital because I can't tell you about that, but Tracy and my mom and my kids told me stories, and it was absolutely heartbreaking and scary.
We got her checked in, and she was immediately admitted to the critical care unit at another hospital. And the doctor came in, and it's the first time I noticed like Cheryl's ankles were really swollen. And I said, Doctor, her ankles are really swollen. And so he's like, she's in heart failure. Like she's experiencing heart failure. That's with a fluid, which is why she was having problems breathing, and she was coughing and having a hard time sleeping. And when he examined her, he said to me, are you her next of kin? And I said, yes, I'm her spouse. And he said, I will tell you that there's a continuum of people that experience a thyroid storm. On one end, it's a storm and we want to treat it because it's very serious. He said, your wife is on the very far end in seriousness. And he said, if you had not gotten her here in the next 24 hours, her heart would have stopped and she would have died. And it was then that it was like, wow, like still it's hard to even say those words. Cheryl died, like that she could have died if we had not gotten her there. So it began a series of days of Cheryl being in the critical care unit. It was a very emotional, hard time. The person we knew was not the person we were seeing in the hospital. She, at one point, didn't remember who I was. Her son, she couldn't tell you our address. She thought everyone there was out to get her, like she was in a delirium. The thyroid storm caused a delirium, where she tried to exit the hospital. We had to have a sitter with her for a couple of days, even though we were there 24/7, never left her side, because she was so confused about why she was there and she didn't understand. So during that time, I think it was hard being helpless that I try to tell her, like, baby, listen to me. You have to take the medicine. You have to get the test. You trust me. We need to do this. And and eventually I would get her to agree for them to give her a test, but she was fighting everything. And you guys, I just can't tell you what it's like to see your spouse in that helpless place where she doesn't know who you are and she thinks you're not there for the right reason. And I'm like, I'm your baby. Like, I'm your wife. I love you. Trust me. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you. Same thing with her kids and her mom, all of us just rallying around her in this time. And you guys, she doesn't remember any of it. She doesn't remember it. So the things that she was saying, her behavior that we were like, whoa, we remember, but she doesn't. And the doctor said she's never going to remember that. And thank God that she won't remember that. Do you want me to keep going? Okay. So probably around day 6 or 7 in the hospital, she was doing better, very weak. They would not release her because she physically was not very mobile. So she's gone through PT. She, the trying to find words and just struggling with that has gotten so much better. She's a badass, and she's really just she's doing great at just the recovery and the being healthy. And she's trying, but even for someone who's as confident and, badass like Cheryl, that step back, it does make you go like, well, wow, I, see things differently now, right? So we got her home, and every day since then, it's like, baby, you check your blood pressure, making sure she's taking her medicine, and we're walking so she can get her strength, and physical therapy to help her gain some of her mobility. I mean, this is someone who lifts weights and does all kinds of stuff physically. So to not be able to just walk a simple walk has been very challenging for her. But through this time, it has cemented my love for her and my commitment to our marriage. Who would have known that my brother died 1 month, I'm on a 50th birthday trip, and my wife gets so sick that she could have died, and we were out of the country.
It was a lot.
And I think what we just want to say to you all, you guys, is life is unpredictable. So many things could happen in the blink of an eye. You're living your life, doing your thing, and then boom, you're hit with something catastrophic. And if you have a solid foundation and you work hard to build a solid connection and foundation with your significant other, your partner, your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, if it's strong and solid, it's going to withstand the test of time, the challenges. We had been married a year when all of these things started happening, less than a year when all of these things started happening. And it changed the course of our relationship. We are stronger than we could have ever probably imagined. We are more committed than we probably could have ever imagined, and more in love. Those challenges brought us closer together in a way that a perfect, happy life would not have been able to do. So now we know, we can handle anything. So when people say on TikToks or comments about, aren't you afraid of this? Or are you afraid this is going to happen? This is grown love, love that's been through so many tests individually, but now even as a married couple, that it's so strong.
We're so glad to be able to share all this with you. I couldn't have done it without Tracy. Period. I couldn't have done it without my mom, my kids. But at some point, all those people that are visiting and they go home, and the person you're doing life with is there with you every single day and helps you get stronger every day and reminds you who you are every day. And that's what she's done for me. Because there were days that I didn't think I would ever be myself again. I felt like a shell of Cheryl. And it was very scary. And how long have I been home now? 2 months now? So
2.5 months.
I've been home from the hospital about 2 months, 2.5 months. And once in a while, I struggle to find a word, but I'm not fatigued like I was, and just every single day, it gets better and better. The main thing that we wanted to share with you guys is make sure that when you choose someone to do life with, you choose someone who's not just there for the good times, because though there are many good times, and we love to share those with you. There are a lot of times that are very challenging and difficult, and sometimes they seem impossible. But I know now that nothing's impossible, that we can get through anything.
We love you all so much.
We
Don't settle. Don't
Ever.
ever, ever, ever settle.
Like we said before, they're out there.